Number 5 on this list is The Last Winter. The Last Winter is a horror movie that was released in 2008 and stars Ron Perlman, James LaGrosse, and Connie Britton. The movie is directed by Larry Fessenden and is centered around the brutal environmental elements that come with winter. The plot description is as follows. Sent to evaluate the environmental impact of oil drilling in the Arctic, James Hoffman clashes with the drilling crew's chief who wants to get the job done. Strange events begin to plague the crew and they are soon cut off from the outside world. Hoffman and the crew feel the force of Mother Nature's wrath, and there's no visible escape. In all honesty, this is one of the few on the list that I haven't seen, but based off of the many reviews, it seems like the perfect winter horror film. Den of Geek writes, "The Last Winter benefits enormously from its massive and utterly flat Icelandic locations and the sense of isolation and emptiness that they provide. The cold is also an ever-present threat, making us aware that nature can be a formidable danger even without manifesting itself as ancient, angry spirits." And personally, I really like this idea for a horror film because rather than making winter just part of the environment, it actually becomes the main obstacle for these characters. And I imagine that it triggers a bunch of other things as well. It's one thing to watch a horror movie about some crazy monster, but it's a whole other thing to watch one about the environment. This is something that could actually happen. Like maybe one day we're in a plane and it has to have a crash landing, and just like that, now we're stuck in the winter wilderness having to fend for ourselves. I'm gonna be making an effort to watch this movie very soon, and from what the internet is telling me, I recommend that you do the same. Number 4 on this list is Frozen. Alright, so I know what you're thinking. When did Disney's blockbuster musical turn into a thriller survivor film? And I'm here to tell you that it didn't. Anna and Elsa are still happily building snowmen. The characters in this movie, though, aren't quite as jolly. Directed by Adam Green and released in 2010, the film stars Shawn Ashmore, Emma Bell, and Kevin Zegers, who play 3 friends that get stuck in a very dangerous spot. The premise is super simple. As a winter storm approaches, 3 people become stranded on a chairlift high above the ground after a ski resort closes for the night. For those fellow skiers out there, I know that we've all had this thought before. What if I get stranded on a chairlift? What the heck am I gonna do? This is the question that these 3 friends have to deal with the entire movie. What makes this thing more difficult for them is the fact that it's blistering cold out, and sitting high in the air in a chairlift isn't really keeping them super warm. Also, the fact that on the ground there are some very hungry and very aggressive wolves waiting for a nice tasty meal. Ed Koch, who's a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes, writes, "Frozen is a tour de force, not because of exceptional performances by the actors, but rather the outstanding directing by Adam Green, who also wrote the script. The script gave Green a limited area within which to work, and he carried it off superbly. I will give you a fair warning, this movie is pretty gory, but I feel like that's to be expected from a winter horror movie involving a pack of hungry wolves."
Number 3, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I didn't format this list very well because this is also a movie about a clan of inbred hillbilly killer people eaters. Wow, that rolls off the tongue. The original Texas Chainsaw is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. You can see I'm getting a little bit too excited talking about it. There's a little bounce in my step when I talk about Leatherface. It's gut-wrenchingly horrifying in a way that the sequels were just never able to capture. And despite its larger-than-life, terrifying premise, the movie is very grounded and directed in such a grisly style that it seems more like evidence than a movie. It seems like something truly happened to a bunch of hapless tourists. While the whole Sawyer clan are vile, it's Leatherface that dominates your attention, the wretched butcher of the family, clad in human skin, wielding a chainsaw behind dead, broken eyes, a scared, mentally feeble man doing what his parents want. Leatherface is one of the most terrifying horror movie icons ever, and he was based on a real man. Leatherface is inspired by the real-life butcher of Plainsville, Ed Gein, who is an infamous criminal who lived in Wisconsin on an isolated farmstead with his domineering mother. After his mother passed, Gein's mental state deteriorated very poorly, and he began robbing graves to satisfy his desires. Now, Gein wasn't just a grave robber, he was a killer too, let's get that out of the way. He targeted women and he would use their remains to create horrific keepsakes. Gloves, masks, lampshades, clothing, all the things Leatherface and the Sawyer family decorate their home with, you could have found in Ed Gein's home. You can find pictures of these things, but I think I'm gonna give the editors a break. Throw a picture of a kitten or something up here, and if you're curious about it, you can search it on your own time. There are pictures out there. Perhaps most disgusting was his intent to create a woman's suit that he could climb inside of to wear another person's skin. And if that sounds familiar, it's not just Leatherface that Gein inspired. His horrific MO inspired inspired Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs and Norman Bates from Psycho, especially that relationship with a domineering mother. Authorities would discover Gein in 1957 and were shocked by the contents of his house. He was arrested and would spend the rest of his life in mental asylums and died in obscurity, but the legacy he left will shock people for decades after his passing. Number 2, Scream. Oh, if I had to pick like a favorite of all time horror movie, there's a good chance it'd be Scream. I know I literally just said it was Texas Chainsaw. Scream's awesome. It's a fun, clever subversion and satire of tired horror movie tropes. A horror movie in which the characters know they're in a horror movie. And it's just a great slasher with an instantly iconic bad guy. Ghostface was an overnight icon as one of the coolest horror villains. He looks great on a t-shirt. Now, the Woodsboro Killer wasn't just inspired by his love of Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, but by the real-life serial killer Danny Rawlings, known by his gruesome sobriquet, the Gainesville Ripper. Rowling was a delinquent living in Gainesville who had trouble keeping a job and had been arrested several times for robberies and once for stalking and peeping. Naughty naughty. In 1990, Rowling began a string of violent killings, exclusively against petite Caucasian college-aged brunettes. He would break into their homes, kill them, and defile their bodies. He would pose his victims in tableau and these like disgusting scenes in the hopes that the police would be shocked by what he had left for them. Most horrifyingly though, all of this happened in the span of a few days, shocking the college town. It wasn't until later when a killing in a different town of Shreveport gave authorities enough information to put together key details and evidence connecting Rowling to both crimes and apprehend him. He was arrested and put to death. On trial, he said his goal was superstardom and he wanted to be a celebrity like Ted Bundy. Screenwriter for Scream, Kevin Williamson, said that while hearing the news about the Gainesville Ripper, he looked around his house and noticed a window open in his home that he couldn't remember leaving open, instantly terrifying him and causing his imagination to run wild, thinking about a killer prowling around town on young college women seeking attention, treating it like a game. Now, while Ghostface might be kind of a fun horror movie icon, the real criminal behind him is downright horrifying. Coming in at the #1 spot today is going to be Borderland, which is a kind of unknown horror movie from 2007. You might not have heard of it. I'll throw the IMDb synopsis right here real quick. On a trip to a Mexican border town, 3 college friends stumble upon a human sacrifice cult. That's a classic premise for a horror movie, right? Sounds really scary. Tourists on vacation? Well, you already knew it because of the context of this video. It was pulled from the headlines, based on a horrific string of killings and ritualistic human sacrifice perpetrated by a satanic cult. The film is inspired and based around Adolfo Jesus Constanza, a Cuban-American criminal who was involved in the trade and led a cult in the 1980s. He was born in 1962 and operated primarily in Mexico and claimed he was a practicer of black magic. Constanzo's cult, the Narco-Satanists, engaged in all manner of horrific criminal activity, obviously including smuggling and human sacrifice. They believed that these rituals would grant them success and luck in their enterprises. Mark Kilroy was an American college student who on spring break was tragically abducted by this cult and subjected to unimaginable suffering for his brutal death. Kilroy was in the wrong place at the wrong time, with a group of friends traveling to Matamoros, a border town across from Brownsville, Texas. Now, Mark was young and athletic, which made him appealing to the cult that was seeking out these traits for their sacrifices. He was captured, taken to a remote ranch, killed ritualistically, and discovered in a mass grave alongside other victims. The case was shocking, and it's this horrific glimpse into the darkest recesses of reality that inspired the film Borderland, reminding us sometimes that we really can't write anything scarier than what humans get up to on their own.
In at number 5, The Birds. At this point, I shouldn't even need to tell you why The Birds is such a classic and should definitely be revisited by horror lovers every year. This movie is iconic and gets better and better with age. Directed by Alfred Hitchcock and released in 1963, this horror is loosely based on the 1952 story of the same name and focuses on a series of unexplained bird attacks on the people of Bodega Bay in California. The movie stars Rod Taylor, Tippi Hedren, and Jessica Tandy, with it being the movie that propelled Hedren into the limelight. Though the movie itself may sound ridiculous, it is truly a terrifying and bizarre film that quickly made everyone second guess Bird's true intentions. The movie was such a success, it has since been deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the United States Library of Congress back in 2016, essentially selecting it for preservation. Now, of course, the most iconic part of the movie is the simple fact that the majority of birds used in the film were in fact real, which of course resulted in a few minor injuries to Tippi Hedren, who suffered a lot on the set of the movie, with Hitchcock being known to be particularly nightmarish. On top of that, Hitchcock also signed Hedren to a 7-year contract, which restricted her from working at any other studio. This of course only came out following the death of the director. Despite that, the movie itself is a work of art, and one of the most significant horror movies in the genre's history. Killer Birds. It sounds impossible, but Hitchcock made it happen, and he did it with swagger, that's for sure. In at 4, we have The Last Man on Earth. Released in 1964 and directed by Sidney Salco, The Last Man on Earth is a black and white horror movie based on the novel I Am Legend, written by Richard Matheson in 1954. Now, most will of course know the movie starring Will Smith, I Am Legend. However, this film was its predecessor. Starring Vincent Price, the Earth is stricken by a disease, with one man, Morgan, struggling to survive by killing vampires. Everyone on Earth has been infected by a plague which has turned them into undead vampires that fear mirrors and cannot stand the sunlight. They are weak, in turn not killing Morgan, with the lone survivor going about the same routine every single day until everything begins to fall apart around him. Now, despite not being favourable upon release, it has gone down in history as one of the greatest classic horror movies that people should definitely watch, with many people returning to it each and every year. Some folks even go as far as to call it the greatest Vincent Price movie ever, which is quite the bold statement. I'm not sure I agree with it. Despite that though, writer Richard Matheson was unsatisfied with the finished product and instead opted to be credited as Logan Swanson.
Number 3, The Cabin in the Woods. Directed by Drew Goddard and written by Joss Whedon, The Cabin in the Woods is a fresh take on the classic, hey, here's the bad guy, here's its powers, now come together, do a big group hug, cry a bit, bam bam, we'll use our love to kill him. No, it's not like that. It's different in a good way. We open up with a group of friends as they head to a secluded cabin in the woods. And then once they arrive, they find this huge collection of haunted relics in the cellar. They don't know it's haunted, very important part. After reading a passage from one of the books, they begin being hunted down by killer zombies. That's what happens when you read passages out of books. Now, this already sounds like it's been done before in movies, and that's exactly what they want you to think at this part. So while the gang acts like a bunch of stereotypical teens in a slasher flick, scientists are actually working behind the scenes to ensure that everything at the cabin in the woods is going as planned. That's right, so while they're all drinking and playing truth or dare with the heads of animals, no, I'm not kidding, yeah, no, no one does that. No one ever does. I've done it once, okay? Get out of here. So these scientists are ensuring that the ancient ones get what they want, which is a sacrifice. Of course, of course. The haunted relics are there purposely so that they are discovered. So in the movie, it's said that the Lovecraftian gods, known as the Ancient Ones, actually exist. So in order to keep them calm, cool, and collect, and hopefully not destroy the entire world, a sacrifice must be done, and this is where our leads come in. For a twisted tale of people being bet on for how they're gonna die, it's actually pretty hilarious at parts, and scary too. It is still scary. Can't forget to mention that this movie has a handful of scenes that actually really messed me up for a few hours after I saw it. Like, sure, it's kind of a parody horror movie, but at the same time, these scenes are happening. You are watching a group of friends being stalked by terrifying things. The shots, the music, it's all there. And it's hard not to love the cast too. I mean, the entire time you're watching, sure, you're rooting for the main characters and all, but like, the scientists are also the main characters. They're doing all of this to save the world. So you're kind of like, yep. With a nice little double twist ending, The Cabin in the Woods did quite well with critics, and many have actually wanted a sequel. I'd watch a sequel. I mean, all those monsters, we only saw a fraction of what those things could do. Number 2, Cloverfield. The classic shaky cam blockbuster was released back in 2008. God, it's been that long, eh? God, it feels like that was just a week ago. This counts as a Lovecraftian horror movie, and I'll tell you why. It was directed by Matt Reeves, the mastermind behind the Planet of the Apes trilogy, the new Planet of the Apes, which is very important, that Planet of the Apes trilogy, not the one where Mark Wahlberg's like, huh? That's the Statue of Liberty? What? Not a bad impersonation. And it was written by Drew Goddard, the guy who went on to write The Cabin in the Woods, that movie I talked about a minute and 10 seconds ago. Be nice if I nailed that. Cloverfield was the first movie that made me physically uncomfortable to watch, like really. All my friends weren't a fan of the whole POV shaky cam thing for an entire movie, but for me it felt like it was something fresh. I mean sure, it would have been nice to actually see this Lovecraftian monster more than we did, but that's the best part. It's nice when things are bottled up. Don't tell us what's going on, don't tell us what's gonna happen, just show us what the main characters are seeing and we'll figure it out. We figure it out or we don't. That's just how it goes. Sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, or sometimes you watch it and you're like, yep, I understood every single part of that movie. I'm absolutely seeing that again. So we start off with our leads at a farewell party. Ironically, a farewell party. So we got Lizzie Kaplan, Jessica Lucas, TJ Miller. They're having a decent time when all of a sudden there's a big explosion and we see the Statue of Liberty's head. Huh? Statue of Liberty's head? Get out of town. Callback, I knew I had it somewhere. Yeah, so off the bat you think, oh, it's Godzilla. No, it feels scarier somehow. Like in Godzilla they had these beautiful shots that show the beast in beast mode coming out of the water, but here it's just the actors reacting to the world as it horrifically changes before their very eyes. And if you haven't seen Cloverfield, I think it's time you give it a shot. Even if you have seen it and you weren't a fan the first time, go back, watch it again. With all these modern handheld cam movies out, it's kind of nice to go back to like the OG blockbuster shaky cam horror movie. It's also cool to see alien monster movies from the same perspective as the leads. That's the best part. And finally, number 1, Color Out of Space. Okay, this movie is insanity at its finest. Released in 2019, directed by Richard Stanley, Color Out of Space stars Nicolas Cage, Joely Richardson, and Julian Hilliard, who we recognize as young Luke from Haunting of Hill House with the glasses. Oh, he's so cute. I always want to grab his glasses and just clean them off, you know? So right off the bat, I knew that this cast liked doing crazy shit. So what is the Color of Space and why is this so crazy, you ask? Let me tell you a few things, good sir. So without giving the ending away, we start off with the family sleeping, hanging out, doing their thing. Some are on their phones, probably watching some more top 5 scary vids. I don't know, maybe Che's new top 10 vibe channel. I don't know. But all of a sudden, a pink meteorite crashes and lands near their house. Now normally you would think, maybe it's just an alien. It is based on the H.P. Lovecraft story also titled Color Out of Space. So it's probably worse than an alien egg, if I'm being honest. It is. It's much worse. So without giving too much away, the meteor starts making people act different. This family starts acting a little bit off, to say the least. And it might be the most ambitious horror movie I've seen in a very long time. I watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I gotta tell you, I watched it again the next day. I watched this movie when I was tired and I was doing like the slow blinks, you know? And then by the time the credits rolled, I was sitting up like, it's 4 a.m. Well, I gotta go to work, I think. I don't know. It made me question my existence. I had no idea what I was watching at times, but I enjoyed all of it. I didn't watch the trailer or anything going into this film, and I strongly recommend you do the same. Just go to Netflix, type the movie in, grab a glass of water, and just sit there and don't blink or move or talk to anybody, and just watch it. I felt like I was watching Halloween Town at the beginning. Like it starts off fun, a little bit cheesy. Now I say the acting is bad because everybody in the movie amps it up so much once it gets going. They were clearly putting some stuff in their back pocket acting wise until it was time to show the big guns. So these subtle character changes that happen on and off screen are so good. The best part of the movie that, in my opinion, makes it worth watching is Nicolas Cage. And I know people like to mock how extra he is in movies. I've done it, we've all done it, but it makes sense in this one. It's such a slow burn in the entire film. This Lovecraftian cosmic horror was the perfect film to use Nicolas Cage's crazy acting style. The fact that he is the same guy who did National Treasure is so funny to me. He's nuts. I actually love him. The director asked Nicolas Cage to use the same style of performance that he did in Vampire's Kiss. So if you've seen that, you're kinda in for a treat.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Might as well kick it off with a classic, right? I had a tough time choosing between the two legendary impressionistic classics, but Caligari beat out Nosferatu by a hair. But I will still shout out Nosferatu to make sure my butt's covered. Classic German horror should always be celebrated, but man, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is something special. The dark, twisted visual style stands out even today, drawing viewers into a world like no other. Everything is set at a terrible angle, structures and shadows take on brand new identities in the dark. Light and darkness are always in stark contrast, adding to the overall effect. The sets were built to be extremely disorienting and angular, and it's wonderful. Realism expressionism out the window. We follow the story of a young man named Francis who runs into a terrible string of misfortune. After a man who goes by the name Dr. Caligari comes to town, all sorts of oddities begin to occur. The doctor receives a permit to present a spectacle at the town fair, one that features a somnambulist or a sleepwalker. After forewarning Francis's friend that he'll die that night, the somnambulist's prediction comes true. As more people die and disappear, a high-stakes investigation into the dark and creepy world of Caligari is started. Really and truly, it's hard to overstate the influence this movie's had on the rest of the filmmaking world. It has such a fascinating singular style and offers up a whole boatload of scares. Even though it might seem a little dated these days, there is plenty to love here. Coming in at number 4, we've got Der Bunker. Jumping ahead nearly a century, we've got a modern German horror movie. Der Bunker is a genre-bending horror comedy absolutely filled with twists and turns. This is a very strange movie, but worth a watch for sure. We meet a nameless student who heads to an idyllic home in the countryside in hopes of a relaxing life. As you might have gathered, it's not very relaxing. He moves in and discovers that his room is pretty barren, and also the house isn't a lakefront property, it's a bunker. And the people living there are pretty eccentric too. Actually no, scratch that, they're a little crazy. Once the student settles in, the landlords start to insist that he tutor their son, Klaus. They say that Klaus is 8 years old and will someday be the President of the United States. Neither of these things are possible, as Klaus looks way older than 8, and he is a German citizen. Also, the mother has a gaping wound in her leg that talks to her. Oh, right on. Dealing in absurdity and discomfort, this movie is one that really needs to be seen to be believed. And if you think the beginning is odd, wait until the end.
In at number 3 we have Arachnophobia. Arachnophobia, yes, I've discussed this movie a few times, and yes, this terrifies me more than anything, but it's also incredibly underrated and oftentimes forgotten. Maybe we all blocked it out. I certainly blocked it out because I hate spiders with a burning passion. Anyway, released in 1990 and directed by Frank Marshall, Arachnophobia stars Jeff Daniels and John Goodman, with the movie centering on a newly discovered prehistoric spider from Venezuela, which is transported to a small California town. It then produces a species of deadly spiders which begin killing the town's residents. Any film about spiders is usually a scary one, and Arachnophobia is no different. The spiders are everywhere, nowhere is safe and certainly no one. From an elderly man putting on a slipper to a woman in the shower, spiders can attack at any time and in any place. Now there is no blood, no gore, no gaping wounds, just simply the fear of spiders, which we can all relate to. That is what Arachnophobia presents us with, and it is incredibly effective. Not to mention when you finally see the big mama spider, that will definitely send chills down your spine. The movie quite literally centers on one family trying to take down the growing infestation and defeat the mother spider. The entire movie is my worst nightmare, with spiders maneuvering around left, right and center, hiding under toilet seats and lingering in lampshades. I hate it, but that's what makes it so good. It's so damn effective and definitely deserves more respect. In at 2 we have Stir of Echoes. Honestly, I often forget this movie even exists, but I get very excited when I remember it because this film truly terrified me growing up. Released in 1999 and directed by David Coop, Stir of Echoes is a supernatural horror movie based on the 1958 novel of the same name written by Richard Matheson. The movie follows Tom Witzke, played by Kevin Bacon, a phone operator who begins experiencing strange goings-on, as well as a series of frightening visions after he is hypnotized by his sister-in-law. Now, this movie's downfall is that it came out the same year as The Sixth Sense, so it was incredibly overlooked, disappointingly. We follow Tom, who begins to see visions of the same ghostly entity, Samantha, that his young son has supposedly been talking to. It's all very creepy, with editing that adds even more fear to this already terrifying ghost tale. Tom becomes obsessed with Samantha and finding out what exactly happened to her, with the locals in his Chicago neighborhood dubbing her a runaway teen. But something is more at play here. Tom, being hypnotized, opened up his mind to the world of the supernatural, and it tells us that we may never know what spirits may be lingering in our homes. The movie has an excellent twist, and one that I will not reveal. You're welcome, I usually spoil everything. But Tom unravels a deep web of lies and attempts to free Samantha's spirit and bring her peace. The movie is truly excellent, with creepy elements and many well executed jump scares, not to mention Kevin Bacon is always on top form. And finally, in at number 1 we have Funny Games. Unlike its title suggests, Funny Games is by no means a funny movie. It's actually incredibly disturbing and every person's worst nightmare. Released in 1997 and directed by Michael Haneke, Funny Games is an Austrian horror movie following 2 men who hold a family hostage and torture them with sadistic games in their own home. The movie is aimed at cinema goers who revel in violence and find entertainment and enjoyment in people being tortured on screen. There is an entire subgenre dedicated to this lewd fascination assassination, torture porn, and personally, I'm a fan. Anyway, the film itself is incredibly meta, breaking the fourth wall countless times and involving the audience in the sadistic games taking place inside of the home. The two young men address the audience directly, even rewinding the film at certain points, suggesting that the viewers are involved in their cruel acts. We're participating. Because at the end of the day, we hold the power. We hold the remote, but we don't switch it off. We just watch and witness. The movie suggests throughout that we're supporting the actions of the young men, when we in fact have the power to end the torment simply by switching it off. It's an incredibly smart but also eye-opening movie, not to mention it's incredibly brutal, disturbing, and not one that you can easily return to. It's an excellent criticism that hits viewers hard, making us all feel like accomplices in this cruel game. The director also made an American version of the movie starring Tim Roth and Naomi Watts. It's a tad easier to swallow but just as disturbing in nature. Many people don't discuss these movies enough. They truly are fantastic, but definitely not fun. Not funny, not fun. Coming in at number 5, we have The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Released in 2017 and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, The Killing of a Sacred Deer stars Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman and follows a cardiac surgeon, Colin Farrell, who secretly befriends a teenage boy with a connection to his past. He introduces the boy to his family, who then begin to fall mysteriously ill. Now, director Lanthimos is renowned for making incredibly uncomfortable and distressing movies, entering Killing of the Sacred Deer with Dogtooth and The Lobster under his belt. However, Killing of a Sacred Deer seems to be the most distressing. The relationship formed between Colin Farrell and the teenage boy is wildly uncomfortable and awkward, making you want to shield your eyes away from anything happening on screen. However, before we know it, awkwardness turns into horror, with the teenage boy Steven demanding a sacrifice. The movie digs deep under your skin and plays out in a deadpan and absurd way, just like the rest of his movies do. It descends so quickly into madness that you can't quite keep up, and things are soon the stuff of nightmares. It is almost impossible to describe the effect Killing of a Sacred Deer has on the psyche, but it lingers with no desire to leave. Coming in at number 4, we have Funny Games. Directed by Michael Haneke and released in 1997, Funny Games is a psychological Austrian horror movie that revolves around two young men who hold a family hostage and torture them with sadistic games in their vacation home. The movie puts you as the viewer through the ringer, along with the rest of the family. It feels like the director is calling us out for seeking such a disturbing movie, and in turn kidnapping us and taking us along for the ride. The film frequently blurs the lines between fiction and reality, and actively highlights the act of observation, making you, the viewer, feel like the villain. The movie wants to hold you, the viewer, responsible for your taste in violence, and in turn taking us captive along the way. The character Paul frequently breaks the fourth wall throughout, and even addresses the camera in certain scenes. On top of that, Paul frequently states his intentions to follow the standards of film plot development, and shows awareness of the audience's expectations, even asking us questions throughout. It's a movie that is as self-aware as they come. It feels like a reality show that you have the control over. After all, you have the remote. You can end this at any moment, but you don't, and the director knows that you won't. So the characters continue to call you out, while inflicting torture on the innocent family. The movie is truly pure genius, and if you haven't yet, I suggest you check it out immediately. Also, the same director did an American remake starring Naomi Watts. It's very good, just as good.
And number 3, The Shallows. Starring Blake Lively and directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, this 2016 shark thriller is about a medical student named Nancy Adams, played of course by Blake Lively, as she sets out to a secluded beach to hit some waves to help her get over a close death. Now, after she grabs her board and gets going, she's only a mere 200 meters away from shore when a great white shark sets its sights on Nancy. So terrified, she books it to the nearest rock, and that's kind of above water. You know, it's not an island, it's just like a little boop. And she waits for Jaws' angry cousin to leave. She waits and waits and keeps waiting, and unfortunately this shark is just in no rush today. It has all the patience in the world and waits for Nancy to return to the water. This shark has been around the block a few times. It knows this rock is very petite, and eventually its dinner will have to return to the shallows. This movie was written by Anthony Jaswinski and directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, who is the same director that did those Liam Neeson action flicks, like The Commuter, Nonstop, Run All Night. So if you were a fan of the tension in those action movies, you're gonna like this shark horror tension as well. I liked it a lot more than I thought it would, to be honest. When I saw the trailer about a shark stalking somebody, I was like, okay, I wasn't quite sold, but my mind was quickly changed once I clicked play. It's very well executed, and if this is the last good shark movie, I'm okay with that. Number 2, The Descent. Directed by Neil Marshall, released in 2005, The Descent follows Sarah, played by Shauna McDonald. as she copes with the death of her late husband and daughter. A lot of these have to do with death. I think it's weird. So her and her close friends decide to grab some ropes and explore some caves to help her get over the traumatic experience. So once they get close to the entrance of the caves, her friends start to list off all these possible dangers of their expedition, which is just the perfect time to now bring this up. Great. Those side effects being dehydration, disorientation, claustrophobia, panic attacks, paranoia, and hallucinations. Like, awesome. Thanks for the reminder, Rebecca. We'll see you in there. And as if any of those side effects don't scare you enough, they end up getting trapped in the cave after the entrance collapses. And then soon they meet the crawlers. The crawlers are a group of scary humanoid-like creatures that are blind, but have evolved to live in complete darkness inside of these caves. And they can also crawl around the walls like they're Spider-Man, which is just neat. And obviously they're super gross looking. They're like dirty bars of soap that just came to life. They're like all wet and they slip around. On top of a great horror movie, the group of friends also have this secondary plot that evolves between them. There's a little bit of drama that unfolds when they go in. So even during the quiet moments when nothing scary is happening on screen, the plot is still moving and keeping you anxious the entire time. So many layers of goodness. All wrapped up in an hour and 45 minutes. We love that. And if you aren't a fan of how it ends, don't you worry. There's an alternate ending that some have actually preferred over the one that they went with. They're both so good, yet so different. Many have argued the alternate ending is more suitable, but I don't know. If you've seen them both, comment down below which one you think. Original or alternate. Don't spoil it, just say one of those two. Down there, let's go. I'm curious what the ratio is. And finally, number 1, we have The Mist. Starring Thomas Jane, Marcia Gay Harden, and everybody's favorite police captain, Andre Braugher, the film finds a group of civilians trapped in a grocery store as a crazy storm blows in and causes a touch of chaos. Now, getting locked inside of a grocery store may not sound too scary because, you know, Mr. Noodles and chocolate, but the storm leaves this thick mist that just lingers outside of the grocery store, so they're not really sure if they can leave. But here's the kicker. Here's when it starts to get into full gear. The mist is full of terrifying creatures. So what started off as a trip to grab some groceries is now the tale of survival against these mysterious alien-like creatures. The movie came out in 2007 and Frank Darabont wrote and directed this masterpiece. On top of what may be the best ending to a horror movie, the movie has a lot of tense scenes, of course. I mean, in movies like The Descent, we have this group who chooses to go into the cave and then they have to try and survive and escape. But these guys are just your average Joes. Like, they're just there because they need eggs, you know? So it's pretty easy to relate to the characters and how they react to all this action that's happening. And it's not just one monster either. They're like these giant spiders, they're like a pterodactyl type creature. It's just a hot mess. Stephen King himself even said that he was genuinely frightened by this adaptation of his novella. So if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will.
Coming in at number 5 today is going to be Fire in the Sky, a 1993 horror biopic. There's not many horror biopics out there. Based around the wild alien abduction of Travis Walton in the late 70s. If you're a Top 5 Scary super fan, and I hope you are, you might recognize that I've talked about Travis Walton a few times on the channel, mostly because it's one of the most infamous and well-documented stories about alien abduction, and very directly inspired a movie. In 1975, Travis Walton was working as a logger on an otherwise unmemorable day with 6 other loggers driving around in the forest when they all saw something incredibly bright shining at them through the treetops. One of the men claimed that it looked like a flattened disc, a flying saucer of sorts. And Walton stepped out of the bed of the truck to investigate and was struck by some invisible force that knocked him backwards, which caused the rest of the crew to drive off in a flurry. Some friends just leave you there. When the crew returned, Walton had vanished and awoke, and he thought that he'd been taken to a hospital because he remembered finding himself in a blindingly bright room and could hear people moving around him, but it wasn't until he got a good look at his doctors that he realized something wasn't right. Because his doctors were 3 feet tall with brown quarter-sized pupils, marshmallow-like skin. Walton freaked out, obviously, as I think most of us would do, and was restrained by his captors. He tried to fight them off, but was greeted by a tall creature that he said resembled a humanoid, but was masked by an intimidating Darth Vader-like helmet. Maybe it's just a big fan. The masked creature took Walton and escorted him into an operating room, put a translucent mask over his face, and Walton drifted out of consciousness, unsure if anything was real. He claims the next thing he remembers is walking alongside a highway as if nothing ever happened. He found his way to a phone, called his brother-in-law, who panicked asking what had happened, because it turned out that Walton had been gone for 5 days. Search parties had formed, sent dogs, helicopters, the whole 9 yards, but nobody could find where he was, as if he just blinked out of existence. And then blinked right back. Travis swore what happened to him was a real abduction and has gone on the record many times, maintained his story since that fateful week in 1975 that he was telling the truth. And if you're listening to all that and you think that story sounds really interesting and they should make a movie about it, well, do I have a movie for you. It's called Fire in the Sky. It was in 1993. I haven't seen it, otherwise I'd give you more trivia, but I bet it's pretty good. And if you're looking for more trivia about horror movies that I have seen, well, you can watch the rest of this video, but you can also click through on Top 5 Scary, where we've got loads of horror movie content and pretty much just anything scary you can think of. We got videos on aliens, ghouls, goblins, Frankensteins, true crimes, all of it. Hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell as well, but do that at the end of this video because I got 4 more movies coming up for you. Number 4, The Hills Have Eyes. Wes Craven is a master of horror and frequently was inspired by headlines, stories, and the world around him for his terrifying horror movies. Don't be too surprised if this isn't the only mention of Wes Craven on this list. Spoiler alert, it's not. Now, one of Craven's most iconic movies is the original Hills Have Eyes, a terrifying 77 film about a family that becomes stranded in the Nevada desert and are savagely attacked by a group of brutal raiders who've got a real taste for human flesh. Now, the film was intended to be a commentary on how even in civilized parts of the world, humans can denigrate to unfathomable violence and cruelty, and was largely inspired by a folk tale of a clan of Scottish people-eaters led by one Sawney Bean. The Bean clan lived up in Scotland sometime between the 1500s and the 1600s, and the family is thought to have killed hundreds of people in their time to cook and eat them. Now, there is no definitive, indisputable proof of the Bean clan existing, but several recounts and folklore have persisted about them, causing a good deal of historical speculation. Story goes that Sawney Bean was born to ditch diggers and left home with a vicious woman named Black Agnes Douglas, who shared his violent tendencies. They fell smitten with each other and in a true romance produced 6 daughters, 8 sons, 14 granddaughters, and 18 grandsons, with their clan descending rather rapidly into inbreeding. Hey, the family that eats people stays together. Sunday dinners are important. The Bean clan would lay careful ambushes at night to rob and kill individuals, where they would then bring the bodies back to their cave to and pickle so they could save their leftovers for later. I don't know why, but that makes it worse for me. It's one thing to do that to a person, but to pickle their remains is just too far. After militias were rounded up to crack down on the cookout, eventually this gathered the attention of a king, thought to be James VI, who rounded up soldiers to clear out the Bean clan's cave. Now, tales differ slightly here, but it's thought that when they were found, the Bean clan was summarily executed without trial, thinking they weren't fit to stand one. It's really not much of a leap to see how a clan of outcast, isolated, inbred peasants capturing, killing, and eating people inspired the horrific family in The Hills Have Eyes. Now, I feel like I gotta take a shower or something. After talking about a disgusting family of inbred hillbillies eating human flesh, I feel like we should talk about, I don't know, maybe a slightly more upbeat horror movie, if there is one.
Number 3 on this list is Misery. Misery is a very simple horror movie that's so riveting and scary due to the performance by the actors on the screen. The movie's based on a Stephen King book and is arguably one of the few times that the film actually outdid the novel. The description of the movie, according to Chris Sasquay, is a cozy shelter in the woods during the winter sounds like the ideal cottagecore vibe, except when you're author Paul Sheldon and you're trapped with a superfan. By all appearances, Annie Wilkes is a quirky teddy bear, but there's a reason as to why acting legend Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her performance. Annie is a complicated villain, one who is just as much a danger to herself as she is to others. Don't get on her bad side or you'll get a lesson on what hobbling means, all the while soothing classical music is being played to ease its pain. It's simple horror movies like this that really pay dividends. 2 people stuck in a cottage together during the winter and one of them loses their minds. The film is very highly rated, and even though it was made over 30 years ago, it still holds up as being a quality watch. It might not have the same emphasis on winter as some of the other entries on this list, but I guarantee if you watch it at your grandma's house or a cottage like the one in the movie, then it's gonna hit really close to home. Number 2 on this list is The Thing. The Thing has had a remake of it before, but in this video we're referring specifically to the 1982 version of The Thing directed by John Carpenter. This movie might actually be my personal favorite horror movie of like all time. The movie stars Kurt Russell and it's a brilliant example of horror movies from the 80s. The plot description from Google is, in remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. When they take in in the dock, it brutally attacks both human beings and canines in the camp, and they discover that the beast can assume the shape of its victims. A resourceful helicopter pilot and the camp doctor lead the camp crew in a desperate, gory battle against the vicious creature before it picks them all off one by one. Winter is in the air in this movie. Being in Antarctica, the researching crew is consistently getting bombarded with the effects of the cold and their snowy environment. Whether it's communication systems breaking down, vehicles freezing, or just generally getting snowed in, winter is definitely an obstacle for our protagonists. The one knock against this movie is that the special effects, they don't really hold up. But I honestly kind of love that. They look like special effects from the 80s, and there's something kind of comforting about that to me. Also, the entire premise of the alien or creature being one of your friends is really fun. It makes you think about your own home and your family and wonder how would you respond if one of them wasn't who they said they were. Basically, this movie is the plot to the video game Among Us, but it just does it so perfectly in my opinion. Definitely recommend giving it a watch if you're looking for a fun winter horror themed movie to help you get through the cold. Number 1 on this list is The Shining. You know, I almost didn't include this one because I feel like everyone watching this video already knows about it, but I just couldn't keep it off the list. The Shining is often regarded as one of the best horror movies of all time. Released in 1980, the horror flick stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and is directed by Stanley Kubrick. The movie is based off of one of Stephen King's most famous novels of the same name. The movie, according to Google, is about how Jack Torrance becomes winter caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel in Colorado, hoping to cure his writer's block. He settles in along with his wife Wendy and his son Danny, who is plagued by psychic premonitions. As Jack's writing goes nowhere and Danny's visions become more disturbing, Jack discovers the hotel's dark secrets and begins to unravel into a homicidal maniac hell-bent on terrorizing his family. What this description fails to inform you of, though, is the environment outside the hotel. It's the dead of winter in Colorado, and that aspect really plays into the whole movie. The characters get snowed in, and that's why simply leaving isn't an option. Similarly to some of the other movies on this list, the feeling of isolation due to the blizzarding outside is shown throughout the whole movie. This really adds to the scare factor because the safe inside that's keeping you warm, well, it really isn't that safe at all. Jack Nicholson is also marvelous in this movie, and the journey his character goes on is brilliant and really chilling to watch. Frankly, this isn't just a winter horror movie that you should watch, but if you're a lover of horror and you haven't seen this one, then it needs to go on your list. Sean T on Rotten Tomatoes puts it beautifully. Chilling, haunting, and unforgettable. The Shining is a horror masterpiece that radiates some of the finest filmmaking of all time.
Number 5, The Void. Released in 2016, written and directed by Jeremy Gillespie and Steven Konstantansky, is the tale of a police officer who is delivering a patient to a hospital. Okay, so far it's not too crazy. However, this hospital isn't too ordinary. As soon as he gets there, things feel and look weird. Whenever I watch movies with hospitals, I always get so uncomfortable by like the lighting. It's always dark and flickery, no one's ever around. I've had some nightmares as a kid about abandoned hospitals. They're not pleasant. I still have them. I still have many nightmares about hospitals. So he gets there, alright? He drops the patient off, and once he realizes that the patient had heroin marks, the police officer thought, you know what? Probably best to wash the blood off my uniform just to be safe. Pretty standard procedure here. Probably a good call. He bumps into his estranged wife, who was a nurse at the hospital. So he washed up, catched up a little bit, and then he goes out into the hospital hallway and sees the other characters, Beverly and Cliff, there. They're just there. This is when things start to take a bit of a turn. See, Beverly is standing over Cliff. Something just doesn't look right about it. It looks very awkwardly placed. So the police officer, David, walks over and sees that she has stabbed the boy with scissors, like through his eye. It's really gross. So he is forced to shoot her because she's, you know, doing that. She's stabbing people in the head. So he unfortunately has to shoot her. He quickly goes to the washroom where he throws up and passes out, horrified of what just happened. And then he has a dream where he sees a vision of like this dark landscape that kind of looks like Exegol from Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, for all those people who saw it and liked it. All 7 of you. So with this triangular thing just floating in space, guys, if you like 80s horror movies that are just full of honest practical effects, you're gonna love this movie. I don't want to give a lot of the plot away because I don't really think I need to sell it, but this is a dark, twisted hospital horror. It's a Lovecraftian, twisted hospital horror. Need I say more? And the Lovecraftian elements are chiseled in there so nicely with this one. It just makes you feel uncomfortable in and out the entire ride. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Number 4, Event Horizon. Released in 1997, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, written by Philip Eisner, with a star-studded cast featuring Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, and Kathleen Quinlan. Event Horizon is a classic 1997 space horror, set in 2047. So we've gotten to a time in history in this movie where we can do commercial mining on Mars. Technology is so advanced that now we can just travel the lengths of deep space like nothing. Not too shabby. Also, warp gates. Warp gates in 27 years, I don't know, I think we can get there. I mean, Face ID, that's already insane to me. In 2015, they even have a colony on the moon, which didn't happen yet. Nudge nudge, Elon Musk, hope you're watching. He's not. Maybe. So they plan on traveling faster than light speed, which is impossible. I don't care, it's impossible. Or maybe it's not anymore, man. I have no idea. Space is so scary. So we got Sam Neill, and he breaks down the plan, all Sam Neill-like. And back in 2014, they had made a ship capable of doing this light speed trick. It didn't work too well because when the ship was supposed to reappear hours later, it didn't. Who knows? Maybe the ship went back in time to be with his long-lost lover, Peggy Carter. Let this ship live its life, guys. Well, it did return, but way later. So the crew headed towards Neptune and checked out the lost ship in hopes to find answers of where it's been and what's happened. So they hear a message from the Event Horizon ship, and it translates to "help me" in Latin. See right there, I'd put that thing in reverse and just... So a few members board the ship and it doesn't look good at all right off the bat. So the ship starts to use the crew's fears and secrets against them. That's all I'll say. Kind of like in As Above, So Below. You gotta face your demons in this one. If you liked movies like Cloverfield Paradox or Interstellar, like all these twisted space movies, you're gonna like this one a lot. I'll be surprised if you haven't seen it. It's super dark, the practical effects are mint, and it's a classic. You must have seen it.
In at 3 we have The Changeling. The Changeling is considered to be one of the most frightening movies of all time, and it has every right to hold such a grand title. Directed by Peter Medak and released in 1980, this Canadian supernatural horror follows a New York composer who moves to a mansion in Seattle, which he believes to be haunted. He quickly discovers that the home is haunted by a young boy named Joseph Carmichael, who was murdered by his own father and is desperately hoping someone will learn the truth about his death. It is a terrifying, harrowing, yet emotional story that takes you on a roller coaster ride of emotion. It also tells of the changeling, you know, someone being replaced by someone else, the doppelganger. It opts for exposition instead of jump scares, which truly works in the film's favour. The screenplay itself is based on the experiences of Russell Hunter, the co-writer of the movie while he was living in the Henry Treat Rogers mansion in Denver, Colorado in the late 60s. According to Hunter, he experienced a series of unexplained phenomena in the home, with him even discovering a century-old journal hidden in a room detailing the life of a disabled young boy who was kept in isolation, which is absolutely gut-wrenching to think about. Hunter then claimed to have a seance, during which time the spirit of a deceased boy guided him to another home where human remains were discovered alongside a gold medallion bearing the boy's name. Very spooky indeed. Coming in at 2 we have The Haunting, perhaps one of my favourite horror movies based on one of my favourite books. The Haunting is a 1963 horror directed by Robert Weiss and based on the novel The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Many of you will of course be familiar with the television show of the same name, but it should be noted that the show is drastically different from the novel and the movie, but that is unrelated to the point. The British horror starred the likes of Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson and Russ Tamblyn, with it following the experiences of a small group of people who were invited to a supposedly haunted house by a paranormal investigator. The movie in essence is a slow descent into madness as we watch 2 women, Nell and Theo, lose their minds to fear. As the most faithful adaptation of one of Shirley Jackson's novels, The Haunting successfully manages to scare the wits out of all viewers by doing very little. By brilliantly using black and white and stranding characters in claustrophobic rooms and oddly shaped hallways, the movie is suffocating and isolating. On top of that, the movie is incredibly effective in the fact that it will make you question exactly what you are seeing on screen. Is something supernatural at play in this old house, or is Nell gradually losing her mind over the course of the movie? That is for you to decide. Upon initial release, audiences were said to be so frightened by this movie they were physically jumping out of their seats and even losing items in the process. In Houston, Texas, a competition was held to see which of 4 patrons would be able to sit all the way through a midnight screening of the movie, with the prize being $100. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Black Christmas. Black Christmas is perhaps not just one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but one of my favorite movies of all time. There is a reason this movie is a classic and revisited by many each and every year. Now, I am specifically talking about the original here, not the trashy remakes, let's make that known. Directed by Bob Clark and released back in 1974, this Canadian slasher follows a group of sorority sisters who begin receiving threatening calls from an unknown stalker, who eventually goes on to hunt them down and kill them one by one during the Christmas season. Starring the likes of Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, and John Saxon, this movie was inspired by the classic legend of the babysitter and the man upstairs, as well as a series of murders that took place in Montreal, Quebec. The movie from beginning to end is an utter thrill ride, with the calls becoming increasingly more aggressive, and the sorority sisters quickly getting taken down in very gruesome and grisly ways. Now, what made this movie so damn wonderful was the simple fact that the characters weren't straight-laced girls next door like many slasher movies prior to this were depicting them as. They all had issues. One was an alcoholic, one was a rebel, one was pregnant out of wedlock. They were human characters, something at that point people were rarely seeing. It is also a whodunit story, with us constantly guessing who the killer could possibly be. Is it the boyfriend? Is it one of the sorority girls? Is it the chief of police? And oh boy, when you find out, it is a real doozy. On top of that, the movie is of course Canadian and was filmed in Toronto, which is where I live, so props. Now, like many horror movies, Black Christmas polarized critics upon its initial release. However, with time came more adoration, with the movie now being considered a cult classic and one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Not to mention, it is one of my favorite Christmas movies to watch each December. Nothing like seeing someone get killed on Father Christmas Day. Coming in at number 5, we have Lost Highway. Lost Highway is a movie that makes you question everything, particularly what the hell is even going on, and you can thank David Lynch for that. Released in 1997 and directed by Lynch, the movie follows a musician played by Bill Pullman, who begins receiving mysterious VHS tapes of himself and his wife, played by Patricia Arquette, in their home, and who was suddenly convicted of murder, after which time he seemingly disappears and is replaced by a young mechanic leading a different life. Yeah, even the plot to the movie is incredibly confusing. There's a character, he disappears, another character replaces him. Makes no sense. Once this switcheroo happens, everything descends further into madness, with the replacement character encountering a terrifying devilish creature in white makeup and enters a nightmarish reality where nothing quite makes sense. There are many theories as to what is going on, whether it be that David Lynch is tapping into his own nightmarish reality that he uses when writing his weird experimental horrors. For those familiar with David Lynch's work, you will know that nothing ever makes sense, from Twin Peaks to Eraserhead to Inland Empire. He is incredibly experimental and revels in making viewers feel uncomfortable and distressed. As I'm distressed right now, I'm overheating because I didn't get the PS5 and now I'm hot and bothered and angry. I want to go home. And trust me when I say Lost Highway is the most uncomfortable you will feel. You will have absolutely no idea what's going on, but you will feel completely distressed while watching it unfold. Before we jump into number 4, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, it really helps us out a lot, and then send a prayer for me to get a PS5. Coming in at number 4, we have Ravenous. This is a horror movie that we discuss so rarely, but it certainly deserves more respect, that's for sure. Released in 1999 and directed by Antonia Bird, Ravenous stars the likes of Guy Pearce, Robert Carlyle, and David Arquette, and takes place in a remote military outpost in the 19th century, with Captain John Boyd and his regiment embarking on a rescue mission which takes a dark and deadly turn when they are ambushed by a group of sadistic cannibals. Now, when Pearce's cowardly character Lieutenant Boyd stumbles into Fort Spencer, the few remaining men at the fort, one being Robert Carlyle, begin eating one another. Lovely stuff. The movie itself is about the price of bloodshed, with Boyd being revealed as a man who allowed his men to die, as well as the act of eating human flesh healing wounds and ridding folks of diseases. The cowardly survive and those with moral compass perish. It's very different to your typical horror movie, with those deserving to die outliving the rest. The movie is excellent, bloody, and makes you think, that's for sure. Sadly, Ravenous has been incredibly overlooked, but is a fan favourite among longtime horror movie fans. It's just not a movie that gets a lot of attention from mainstream audiences.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Shram. Ever wanted to peer into the mind of a deranged serial killer? Well, there are plenty of movies that will let you do just that. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and The House That Jack Built are good places to start, but if you'd rather watch a German descent into madness, then Schramm is your go-to. We open with a man lying in a pool of blood and paint, and we can assume that he's dead or dying. Then, in classic cinematic style, we get a record scratch moment. You know, we're probably wondering how he got there. From there, it's down the rabbit hole into the world of Lothar Schramm, Madman Supreme. This movie is directed by Jörg Buttgereit, who is also responsible for the necromantic movies. You know, the cult exploitation films involving necrophilia. So that should tell you quite a bit about what you're getting into here. Although Schramm is much more grounded than a lot of his other work. Not to say it's high art and an easy watch, it's just a little more real feeling. Once we get into the meat and potatoes here, we learn that the main character has some issues with women, and he's not afraid to work through these issues in many bloody ways. Nor is he afraid to branch out and kill some people outside of the feminine persuasion. There's lots of brutal murder in this movie. It's definitely an exploitation flick, not meant for the weak of heart. But if you've sat through myriad other exploitation movies, this is one that's worth a look for sure. Oh, so there's some stuff that happens in this movie that is ridiculous. People with eyes and genitals, you might want to take a sedative before hitting play. Coming in at number 2, Anatomy. If you've ever been worried by a doctor, you might want to skip this one entirely. Some mental wounds can never heal. It's the story of an anti-Hippocratic medical cult that operates in the shadows of a prestigious school. They're up against the Hippocratic Oath. You know, the thing that upholds ethical standards, do no harm. Well, the folks lurking in the dark at the University of Heidelberg don't think it's totally necessary, especially when being ethical doesn't really get them what they want. The Anti-Hippocratic Society has decided to perform living experiments on people they believe are worthless or undesirable. Anatomy presents body horror in a cold clinical capacity. It's scary to see the human body reduced to a cadaver, especially when the body is still alive. Even though it was made in 2000, it has a very old school feel. In fact, one might even think it was made in the 80s, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you like. I really do like 80s movies. Make sure to catch the subtitled version instead of the dubbed one, as dubs on live action flicks tend to fall a little flat. It's well shot with some good kills, so give it a watch. And coming in at number 1, we've got Funny Games. There are 2 versions of this movie made 10 years apart, both by the same director, and they're mostly identical too. After making the first in German, director Michael Haneke thought it was time to bring his picture to a wider audience. He envisioned the movie as a critique of fictional violence in popular media, but I suppose you can never really tell how an audience will receive your work. Funny Games is a stark and brutal movie. It's often hard to watch and makes the audience really confront their relationship with the images they're being presented with. In it, 2 young men take a family hostage in their vacation home and force them to participate in all sorts of horrible activities, or if you prefer, funny games. There really is nothing funny about it though. At first it doesn't seem so bad. The 2 men keep coming over to ask for eggs and start imposing on the family in weird ways. Once it becomes clear that the family is tired of the 2 men though, they switch to psycho mode. They kill the family dog, break the dad's leg with a golf club, and then it's off to the races. Funny Games is an essential entry into the exploitation horror genre, and many folks continue to return to the disturbing world and take away new and different things. I think the most fascinating thing about this movie is the fact that Haneke really believed that people shouldn't watch it all the way through. He made the movie as an over-the-top indictment of film violence and hoped that people watching would be so disgusting and disturbed that they would refuse to engage with it. But for a lot of people, it ended up having the opposite effect. Folks did indeed feel deeply affected by the violence, but they chose to stick it out to the end because they felt for the family. There are some meta moments that I won't get too far into today too, and they add a whole new element to Funny Games. If you're gonna check out one German horror movie, make it this one. Or Caligari, because that's a classic.
Kicking off the list at number 5, Buried. Starring Ryan Reynolds as the lead and only actor in the movie really, and directed by Rodrigo Cortés, the 2010 box film Buried left us breathless. After waking up in a pitch black wooden coffin buried underground somewhere during a job in Iraq, American truck driver Paul Conroy has to figure out where he is, why he's there, and how the hell he's getting out of this coffin alive, with just a lighter and a cell phone with lousy reception. Ryan Reynolds is the only visible actor in the entire movie, and it was filmed in only 16 days. And right now you're probably thinking, cool, I don't want to watch it, that sounds boring. No, Ryan Reynolds himself suffers from claustrophobia in real life, and you can see it in the film, and it's amazing to watch. It's so fun. So Paul Conroy, which is Ryan Reynolds' character, quickly learns that he is being held for ransom for $5 million. Now, I've said enough, that's it. I'm not going to give you any more details about the plot because I truly believe this is one of the best hidden gems out there. As you watch Ryan Reynolds run out of oxygen in the movie, you yourself start to feel the same. It gives you so much anxiety. That's what makes Buried so great. Ryan Reynolds reacts how an average Joe would. He gets scared, he gets upset, he has these panic attacks. Like, he doesn't play the tough guy too much. This movie finds a fine line between, oh, that's what I would have done, and ooh, no way I could ever do that. It's great. If you haven't seen Buried, I'm sure you'll find something in there that you like. Plus, the ending is awesome, sparks a lot of conversation in a good way, so check it out. And before we move on to number 4, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to throw us a thumbs up after this video because it helps us out here at the studio quite a bit. Bless your souls. Alright, now back to the spooky list. Number 4, I Am Legend. Released in 2007, written by Mark Protasevich and directed by Frank Lawrence, Will Smith stars in this dark apocalypse survival movie based off the 1954 Richard Matheson novel. It is set in an abandoned New York City. We see grass growing through middle of intersections, buildings are falling apart, everything's a mess, and then in comes this sick red Mustang. Lo and behold, we meet Will Smith's character, Robert Neville. Robert is a scientist and he's the only living human left in New York, and his hands are quite full. So while fighting off infected humans, who at this point are like these undead vampire-like scary creatures, this guy also has to try and come up with a cure to save humans using his own blood. He just happens to be the only person immune to this virus, hence why he's the lone survivor. But these creatures don't just mosey around and moan and attack whatever just happens to be in their way. No, these things are smart, they're hunters. They're super fast and they're very, very strong. So dying is still a very real possibility, even in a world where you're the only one left. The virus itself was man-made. It actually started out as the cure to cancer, which sounds just lovely. I, like many others, enjoyed this movie a lot. Will Smith is so good in this. He plays a guy who is in the middle of losing his mind, basically. Like, it's gone to a point in this world where he's laid out mannequins around New York in like these various locations to interact with. Because he's been trying to save humans for like 3 years now in this movie. 3 years alone? Guys, I was losing my mind 3 minutes into lockdown. This movie often cuts back to when the outbreak first started, which is neat, because you see Robert with his wife and his daughter, and it's interesting to see how the world got to this point, while at the same time trying to see Robert try and get out of it, you know? And if you haven't seen I Am Legend, just, remove the rock from which you live under, grab your family dog, get a blanket, get nice and cozy, and have a nice movie night. You'll love it.
Coming in at number 3, we need to talk about Kevin. Directed by Lynn Ramsey and released in 2011, We Need to Talk About Kevin is a psychological thriller horror starring Tilda Swinton, a travel writer / publisher who gives up her freedom and bohemian lifestyle to have a child with her husband. However, pregnancy doesn't seem to agree with her, but what's worse is when she does give birth, it is to a baby boy named Kevin who she just can't seem to bond with. Worse still, when Kevin grows up, he becomes a sociopathic teenager who commits a horrific act. Now, the movie is absolutely haunting and earth-shattering, and it takes on one of the most disturbing and upsetting issues in contemporary America, school shootings. Jumping through time and memory, We Need to Talk About Kevin showcases the relationship between Eva and Kevin, and her unraveling psyche, which begins to turn on itself. From start to finish, the movie is an onslaught of mental torment, as we watch on as Kevin grows into a teenager and the hideous deeds he commits. The film is incredibly tough to swallow, and throughout, watching feels like you might be drowning along with the characters. It's a haunting piece of work that you can't quite enjoy, but you can commend for being so visceral and impactful. You never get the answers you seek while watching the movie. Instead, it seems to be actively denying you any kind of resolution, and when the credits roll, you feel completely drained of emotion and tormented by what you just saw. Proceed with caution. I honestly don't think I could watch it again. Once was enough. In at number 2, we have Session 9. I've discussed this movie countless times on this channel now, but I will keep pushing it until the day I die, because this horror movie is pure excellence. Trust. Directed by Brad Anderson and released in 2001, Session 9 is a psychological horror that follows an asbestos abatement crew who begin to experience growing tensions while working in an abandoned mental asylum. This is paralleled by the gradual revelation of a former patient's disturbed past through recorded audio tapes of her regression sessions. Now, Session 9 is an incredibly effective slow burn of a horror movie that seeps under your skin and won't necessarily leave after the credits roll. Now, each one of the crew members have their own dark secrets that begin to unravel the deeper into the asylum they go. go. When one of the team members begins to listen to the haunting tapes of a patient who suffered from severe multiple personality disorder, things begin to descend into madness and become increasingly chilling. The asylum is dingy in the movie lo-fi, making everything appear gritty and uncomfortable. The movie is moody and incredibly atmospheric, and instead of focusing on jump scares, focuses on the horrors of the mind. If you have yet to check out Session 9, you certainly should. From start to finish, you are sucked in and isolated inside the asylum with the crew. And not to mention, it has one hell of an ending that makes you question how you didn't see it coming in the first place. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Jacob's Ladder. Released in 1990 and directed by Adrian Lyne, Jacob's Ladder is a horror film starring Tim Robbins that tells the story of protagonist Jacob, a soldier during the Vietnam War whose experiences prior to and during combat result in strange, fragmentary visions and bizarre hallucinations that continue to haunt him. As his ordeal worsens, Jacob desperately attempts to figure out the truth. Now, this movie is a combination of many things. It is one part war movie, one part political thriller, and another part emotional torment. Throughout the movie, Jacob is trapped in a reoccurring nightmare from the war, as well as struggling with the grief over the death of his young son. He begins to lose his grasp on reality while battling an ongoing suspicion that he may already be in hell. From the director of Fatal Attraction, Jacob's Ladder, from start to finish, has an intense grip on us and our psyche, with us not quite knowing what is real and what isn't. From people with no faces and subways with no exits, what exactly is happening, or is it all merely existing in Jacob's mind? Throughout the movie, he attempts to unravel his traumatic past while also suffering from severe case of disassociation. From start to finish, the movie is a nerve-wracking roller coaster ride, only you're constantly falling with no end in sight. All Jacob wants is peace, and all we want is to know what the heck is going on. Some interesting information for all you horror lovers out there: it was actually Jacob's Ladder that inspired the horror franchise Silent Hill, including the video games and film adaptation.